All right, so we are gonna start the stream. Let's make sure that everything is synchronized. I just wanna make sure that we're live. It looks like we're live right now on my camera. So guys, in today's video, we are gonna be talking about the Sony FX3. I made 3 videos already about this camera, and I was blessed enough to actually get reliable information from one of our sources. And this time I'm 99.9% for sure that these are gonna be the specs, guys. I'm gonna be sharing as well videos that you haven't seen before. These are videos that have been shared by the source. Top secret information. We're not gonna reveal the names as always, and we really appreciate for, pouring this information to us so we can make videos about it and share with the community. Even though, this camera is actually very close to common reality, it is a camera that caught us by surprise. The Sony FX3 is something that no one talked about, and all of a sudden, apparently, we are going to have pre-order starting on the 23rd, and that still be on track. So into this video, I'm going to tell you everything I know about the camera, what has been shared by our source, but also some of the analysis that I've been doing throughout the week with the images that have been leaked by other people out there. Some of the low resolution, some of the good resolution cameras. And I'm also gonna, like I mentioned before, show you a video that shows a couple of the details. It's still like a little bit mysterious, but let's talk about it because there are a lot of people that want to know about this little camera. And some of the main questions that I've been seeing in our channel is number one, what are gonna be the features of this camera? B, is the camera going to cost an arm and a leg? C, is the camera going to be full frame, crop sensor, Super 35 APS-C? D, is the camera going to be heavy? C, F, G, is it fake? All the images that you've been leaking. So let's actually tackle them one at a time. So we got Sneaker Gears. It's asking a question that a lot of you guys asked, and it is if the camera is going to have ND filters. So keep that question there. I'm going to respond to that. First of all, I just like to welcome you guys to the channel. And thank you for being this late, hours away from Valentine's. And it's 11 p.m. right now here in Miami, Florida, Eastern time. Thank you for the support in the channel. Thank you for being here and sharing this with me today. Today, I want to show you images that no one has actually leaked. And they has been shared to us, directly. So if you're here, you're one of the few lucky ones that are going to get, this information and some of the e-videos that I'm going to be showing you. Now, another thing that I recommend is that right now you go to Gaston Shutters on Instagram. I posted 2 videos there. Actually, I posted an image and a video. And I also made a video tonight that is on the channel. You can actually go and watch it after we're done with this one. But let's start talking about Gustavo Covarrubias. Hey, Gustavo. Gustavo is actually the one that won the Sony A7SIII giveaway. And he actually sent me a video that I'm going to be posting today. So before I continue, let me tell you that I'm giving away my brand new Crane 2S. I don't know if you can see it over there. Let me actually bring it. There we go. So I am giving away this baby. Look at this. Xeon Crane 2S. Brand new, and it can be yours. I actually listed the information in my last video. Go check it out. There's also a post on my Instagram at Gaston Shutters. All right, guys, so where are you all coming from? I like to greet you guys before I continue to talk. I like to get to know you guys first. And we got Meat Byproducts, and we got Balls is Life. And yeah, where you guys are coming from tonight. Let me see how many people we have. Oh, okay, yeah, people are starting to come in. All right, so let's talk about the first question. This one comes from Sneaker Gears, and I'm doing this because my computer's right there. So Sneaker Gear is asking if the camera is going to have ND filters. And before I answer that question, I got to actually answer one global question that it entails the features that this camera is going to have. And perhaps instead of going feature by feature first, I'll just tell you what's going to happen with this camera, because what I'm about to say may actually upset a lot of people. And I already saw a lot of people being upset in the last video that I posted. They were disappointed about the findings of this camera. And some people like myself, I'm actually really hyped. But The other thing that I want to, answer, some people call me that I'm a fanboy, Sony fanboy. Guys, I shoot with Canon all day long. Today I had a photo shoot actually, and it was all with the Canon EOS R5. I also shoot with Fuji camera, so I am camera agnostic. I like gear, I like to shoot with different things. So for me to pick a side will be actually, outside of my kind of like realm of things that I like to do, because I like to sample stuff. But anyway, with that said, this camera is going to have, prepare yourself for this, the same features as the Sony A7S III. And yes, so by saying this, I mean that this camera is going to have a full frame sensor. It is going to have the same exact sensor as the Sony A7S III for what I've been told from our source. And when it comes to the features that we're going to expect in this camera, the Sony FX3, you are going to expect the flip-out screen, the brand new menu, touchscreen capabilities, and because this camera is actually a Sony A7S III, we're not having ND filters, which is actually a bummer, because if there is a reason why I could have got this camera, and probably not get it anyway, but one of the reasons why, I was so excited about this camera is ND filters, specifically the variable ND filters. I was gonna buy the Sony FX6, and I decided to actually cancel my order, went for the C70. I'm really happy with the C70. I like the fact that the C70 has up to 10 stop of ND filters. But what happened with ND filters is on the Canon is that they drop in, and every time they drop in by 2 stops. So you either overexpose most of the time or underexpose, and then you have to fine tune either your aperture, and obviously I don't touch my shutter speed, so aperture ISO. So this camera's not gonna have ND filters, and I think that a lot of people are feeling that this was a missed opportunity because, such a compact, small camera with ND filters, this would open, a lot of opportunities for this particular camera. Now, the next thing that I want to say is that, okay, now we know that we have full frame. Now we know that the camera is going to have no ND filters. It's going to have IBIS, guys. This camera is going to have the same sensor IBIS as the Sony A7S III, plus the digital image stabilization, the active stabilization, which, in my opinion, to be honest with you, the Sony A7S III has a great, where is it? Over there. Has a great, image stabilization, but I haven't found a single camera till this day that has an image stabilization that I'll say, okay, yes, I can rely on this, forget the gimbal, So in my opinion, I would have preferred the camera to completely ditch out, sorry for the mic, to completely ditch out the IBIS and give me ND filters, because I can always put a camera in a gimbal, and even with the Sony A7S III, if I have to shoot something for a client, I don't want to take a chance. I'm going to mount the camera in a gimbal like the one that I'm giving away, the Giant Crane 2S, which is incredible. And that's what most people are going to do, right? Now, the IBIS of the Sony A7S III is great for handheld, slow panning, or holding the camera steady. It's going to do a great job, especially when you enable that extra image stabilization that is actually really good. And I got to show you my cup because I'm very proud. My wife got it for me. Boom. I guess I rock, guys. So that is it. So I know that a lot of you guys are commenting right now, and I'm seeing the comments. So let's see what you guys have to say about this one. The FX3 is what you choose if you need a small body that it is modular, unlike the Sony A7S III. It is why I buy the Sigma FB. Good stuff right there. Now, let me tell you another thing. And again, I kind of like spoiling the live right now. But the reason why we have the same thing as the Sony A7S III, and trying to help you guys to understand why this camera exists. And a lot of people say, but why Sony is going to be releasing the same exact camera in a different form factor? There are two very valid reasons. One, the number one is that Sony, they're not going to launch the new drone, the AirPeak, and have you decide which camera is going to go there. That is another opportunity for them to kind of like introduce something very specific to the camera. Remember the Phantom and the GoPro. The GoPro was the go-to camera for that drone. Well, Sony's going to do exactly the same thing here. And this camera makes a lot of sense because the first thing that you want to do when you fly any camera in a gimbal is you want to make sure that you use a body that is what you're looking for, right? But at the same time, a body that doesn't, it's not a huge body. I mean, it is going to be very rare for the average content creator to, mount in a gimbal a 1DX Mark III, right? Why? Because probably you're going to try to go with something a little bit smaller, maybe an R6, an R5, an ESR, right? And this case is exactly the same thing, and Sony is very much aware of this. They're making the drone, so they have all the power to really make a camera that's going to cater to that new product that, in my opinion, I think is going to be very successful. Now, this camera, the first thing that they did is completely strip it out from anything that could actually, be a second accessory for the camera. The number one that is very obvious is the EVF. Removing the EVF, it is a bummer because I like to preview a lot of the things on the EVF, especially in super bright conditions, but it is something that adds weight to the camera, also adds cost to the camera, and it makes the camera a little bit bulkier. So we're now gonna have that, and this is the reason why they decided to go with a body type like the Sony A7SIII, which is this camera that I'm using right now to film this live. And one of the things that you're gonna notice is that the camera is a little bit thicker. And one of the things that I asked my source is, so if the camera is going to have the same features as the Sony A7S3, why they decided to go with a fan? Because he confirms that it's going to have it has a fan. So couldn't give me an answer, and chances are that A, I did not get the full picture. B, there may be some updates on the way that is going to allow the camera maybe to do something a little bit extra that's going to require that cooling power, because the Sony A7S3 and the Sony A1, they do fine with passive cooling system. And especially if it's a camera that's going to, fly in a gimbal, you would expect even more ventilation up in the sky. But that's what I think. I think this camera has something that it has now been told to me yet, and maybe the camera has some sort of ideas for the future, some plans via firmware update. So that's that. Now the next thing is that the camera is going to use the same NPF-Z100 battery. So that was a given pretty much, because all the cameras now are using the same battery, and the camera is going to be full frame, which in my opinion is actually a great call, guys. A lot of people were saying that this camera was going to be a Super 35 or APS-C, which is very similar in size. Now the next thing that I'm going to share with you guys is going to throw off a lot of you cinematographers and a lot of people that were expecting this camera to be a little bit more. And the camera indeed is going to have still capabilities. So this is going to be the first FX camera from Sony with still capabilities. Now, you would say, well, that makes not a lot of sense, because if it's a cinema camera, why in the hell you want stills capabilities? And the reason why you want stills capability is because of what I mentioned before. This camera is going to cater to, to the new AirPeak. And of course, this is going to be a camera for everything, but it has been designed to be a great companion for the AirPeak drone. So if you're a drone pilot, if you are someone that does, real estate, well, most likely you're going to skip a camera that cannot give you still capabilities for, for your photos. Because if you're going to be up in the sky, shooting the terrain, shooting the lot, shooting the house from up high, you're also going to want to capture great image quality. And if the camera does the same, does have the same sensor as the Sony A7S3, 12 megapixel up there in the sky with a great lens is going to be awesome. So I think that this camera will really disrupt the drone market, and I'm assuming that it's going to do it at a much more affordable price than maybe getting an Inspire. Remember, this is a full frame camera now. So this camera is going to be able to pretty much load most of the lenses that you want to, put in this camera. And I guess, most people are going to use primes. But remember, in the last video that we shared, the camera also has a zoom rocker right at the front of the shutter release, and you're going to be able to control a lot of the lenses that Sony has with, zooming. Now, when I say that in my first video, I'm like, whoa, hold on one second. The only style of cameras from Sony that I own that have zooming capabilities are the APS-C cameras. You have the 18 to 105 that has zooming capabilities. You have some of the other, kit lenses like the 18 to 35, 16 to something like that, right? So those lenses have zooming capabilities. But also, the camera can have digital zooming capabilities. Now, I don't know with the 12 megapixel sensor how that's going to work. But remember that Sony introduced the FX9, if I'm not mistaken, with a lens that has internal zooming capability. It has, has the little motor built in the lens. So with this, rocker zooming, you're going to be able to also, operate lenses like that. And that is a full frame lens. So let me actually read the comments because there are a lot right now. They are piling up. And what I want to do right now, let me actually share a video with you guys. Let's see. Did I put in the video? Let's go back here. I was also told that the top handle is going to have also a 3.5 millimeter jag. Now, I asked more information regarding the body about, the things that we are going to have in the body. I don't believe, and I want to be wrong because it'll suck if I have to use the handle to get, microphone. But at the same time, remember, you can connect a lot of the microphones from Sony from the hot shoe mount. So that wouldn't be a bad idea if you really want to rock one of the Sony microphones. Let me show you one right now. In 1 second. Where is it? I'll show you right now. Oh, here it is. So, like, for example, I use in my Sony A7C and in my A6600 this little microphone, which I never remember the name because they're so complicated. It's like W, I don't know, a bunch of letters. But this little guy right here connect simply, let me show you there. Connect simply by the hot shoe mount. So in theory, you really don't need a 3.5 on the body. And if you want XLR, well, you're not going to have any other option than having the top handle. And this is the same situation as the Sony FX3. So this camera, I was told, or I understood that the 3.5 is also going to be located in the handle. Now, let me show you this video because when we show you this, guys. Let me actually show you this because I have it right here. Let me see. Let me actually see this. All right, so I'm doing something right now to show you. I should have this prepared, but let's actually see this together. Oh, no, yeah, it is the same. It is the same. Yeah, it is the same. I own it as well. And as you can see in that picture, is exactly the same thing. You have input 3, which is the, the 3.5. So maybe the camera is going to have at least one input 3 because, I was thinking that this thing was actually different and I just didn't realize that it was exactly the same. Let's actually watch the video once. this view, and as you can see, this is my XLR adapter, is exactly the same thing. So, you know, pretty good news. Now, it is telling me that the gimbal comes with a handle, and you are going to get the camera and the handle, and I believe that there's going to be another combo with the XLR adapter, unless Sony decided just to roll out with a gimbal and, you know, on the gimbal, with the camera and the XLR adapter and the handle all together as a bundle. I think that Sony's also going to offer, you know, one that is going to be the camera only, and then, you know, you can get all the other things. So my nose is itching, sorry about that. All right, guys, so this is what we know. You know, the camera is going to have the same features of the Sony A7S3. I asked him also about the weight of the camera, and it tells me that it is actually almost identical as the weight of the Sony A7S3. Even though the body looks a little bit smaller, in reality, the body is actually almost the same size. So while the design is very reminiscent of the A7C or the A6600, it is a little bit larger. Also, you know, clearly told me that it's also a lot thicker than all the other cameras. Now, the other thing that we can see is that, you know, the camera is going to have a dial at the back. And for this, I want to go to this post by Sony Alpha Rumors. Go here. Let's actually go through this post right here. And as you can see right there, guys, you know, we are going to have, let me just lift the image there. As you can see, guys, you know, you are going to have the back dial right there. There are going to be plenty of configurable buttons. You know, we're going to have a lot of threading to mount stuff. And one of the things that I was thinking, and it makes a lot of sense right now, is that you see that the high shoe mount that has on the side, let me show you again, on the side has 2 1/4-inch thread. All right, so what you do is you actually plug in the handle in the hot shoe mount, and then you secure the handle with a 2 sides 1/4-inch screw. You know, that's pretty clever. Now, this also gives me another understanding, because I am a mechanical engineer by trade. This is what I do daily. I design products, if you didn't know. Medical devices, just to sum it up. And the drum may also have a, you know, the same sort of type of communication. Now imagine if you don't have some sort of way of connecting with a drum, you know, you would have to like kind of like connect a lot of cables. And what I think that Sony is doing in here, they're giving us those 1/4-inch thread on the body. So that I'm assuming, right, that the drone is going to have some way to connect the camera, maybe being held by the top of the camera. You connect the camera and the drone via hot shoe mount, and therefore you get connectivity for everything. You can then control, you know, the shutter. You can control the firing on and off of the movie record. You can take pictures, and then you use those 1/4-inch thread to actually fixture the camera to the drone. It looks actually really good, and it makes a lot of sense to work like that. That way, the camera doesn't need to have any wires, you know, coming out of the ports to actually connect to the drum. But now that we're talking about the ports, let me actually show you in the video. It seems like the ports, if you're familiar with the Sony A7C or the A6600 or any of the A6000 camera, or even the Alpha A7 line, you have several doors, usually about 3 doors. Now this camera, the FX3 only has 1 door for what I saw. Now let's of HDMI or SDI out, and then you may have there a microphone, you know, a little port, or maybe you may have both, the 3.5 and the microphone, because, you know, that door looks pretty big. But I mean, if you have, let me see this one right here. It kind of looks like the door of the battery compartment of the Sony A7C, and I'm actually looking at the Sony A7C right now. So a pretty intriguing camera, guys, but if you have been waiting for this camera and you already use the Sony A7S3 and drones and gimbals is not your main thing, probably you're better off with the Sony A7C in my opinion. But if you're someone that, does weddings, someone that does real estate, someone that does a lot of events, this camera may make a lot of sense because by having a much more minimalistic body, it's going to be a lot easier to balance the camera. It gives you more real estate. I mean, more real estate. It allows you to actually put the camera in smaller gimbals. And, the weight of the body seems to be exactly the same thing as the one of the Sony A7S3. Now, I'm going to read more comments, guys, and I know that there are a lot of comments, so woof! Let me actually go from the top. So, Boss's Life says, Nico from Philippines. How you doing, guys? I am from Chile, living in New York. I am from Argentina. I was born in Rosario. Tacoma, Washington. How you doing? Sandra say hi from Australia. Lucky, it's 2:30 p.m. here. Seems like you're catering to the whole... Yeah, man, I'm catering to the whole world, to koalas, to the wallabies. Me by Prada said the FX3 is what you choose if you need a small body, that it is modular, unlike the Sony A7S3. It is why I bought the Sigma FP. Yes, I agree with you guys. He also said, I can build out an array how I like it. I'm also a Nikon guy, but I have cameras from everyone but Canon. I hate the ergonomics. Okay. Now, let's talk about this comment. Just Chris says, I believe that this cinema... No, I'm sorry. I believe that this camera being a non-still version of an A7S3, it is definitely going to appeal to burger-owning filmmakers who don't want to spend the extra buck for the super EVF and stuff. This camera has still capabilities, Mr. Chris. So, yeah. Probably they're going to be pissed anyways. Nice mug. Thank you, man. Now, Lenore Ray say hello from where? From Switzerland. I think that's the Swiss flag. Yeah. Larry Lolong, we say, if it's the MXF instead of MP4, then I should be clear that the FX3 is meant to be the crash cam. Well, one of the things that our source told us is that the Sony FX3 is going to have the same exact codecs as the Sony A7S3 as well. So that means that the camera is going to shoot 4K up to 120 frames per second, and you're going to get the XAF I always make a mess with those codecs, but you're gonna have all the codecs from the Sony A7S3. So so yeah. What else? Oh, let me see. Just Chris, by the way, listening all the way from Martinique, French Caribbean. Wow, man. Lucky you guys. Thank you for being here. Gerald Baraya says, what's the FA... What... I can talk today. What's the AF mode? Same tracking capability as the Sony A7S3 or the Cripple FX6? For what I've heard, it is the same stuff that you're going to find in a Sony A7S3. And I think that this camera sports the Cinema line name on top of the camera purposely, because at the same time you have the Alpha logo, and the Alpha team is the team that has been developing all the latest mirrorless hybrid shooting capabilities for all the cameras that Sony has released, up to the Sony A7S3 as well. But now we're seeing this in the Sony FX6 and the Sony FX9, and a lot of people have a confusion with this. What this means is that the camera is borrowing a lot of that technology, for my understanding, and that's why it's sporting the Alpha logo. But remember, the Alpha team that developed this camera was a team designed to design cameras for still first, and then that team kind of like expanded into offering video capabilities for the camera. So when you see that this camera, has still capabilities, makes a lot of sense. Now, I think that over here, the part that we're going to be talking about in just a moment is the price. But I think that Sony's trying to prove a point right here by spelling out on the camera, cinema line, right? Because why would you do that? I mean, if you say FX, I mean, you're basically saying that this is a cinema camera. But I think that because of the fact that the camera that stills, Sony wants to make sure that you understand that this is a cinema camera first and then a still camera. Now, I don't know how many manufacturers actually do something like that. I do own a camera that is kind of considered, more of a cinema and less of a, still camera. And that is the Canon XC15. Is the camera that I use for my top views when I film from the house. The older videos, you may see me actually using the camera. And that camera also has still capabilities, bare bones, but has still capabilities. However, the Sony FX3, because it borrows basically the same guts of the Sony A7S3, is going to have powerful still capability, guys. So you're going to have all the autofocusing modes. You're going to have rock solid, eye tracking. Probably it's also going to track animals, and probably it's going to have the same and latest, autofocus performance. Another thing that I'm being told is that this camera is also going to have the same exact screen as the Sony A7S3. For what I can see in that video, let's see if we can see in this menus. Now let's talk about the price, because this is something that I mentioned before. Oh, more comments. I'll try to get to all the comments, guys. So don't get mad at me. I'm trying to focus and deliver the info. But let's talk about the price, because this one is a tough one. Now, I forecasted the price of this camera being between $4,000 and $4,500, and I'm leaning more towards the $4,500. Now, our source told me that the camera is going to be at around substantial additional price on top of, the Sony A7S III. So the Sony A7S III goes for $3,500. Well, at about maybe 500, 600, 700. So in my opinion, and I said in the first video that I released, this camera needs to be priced at $4,500 top. And the reason why is because you have the Sony A7S III for $3,500. Then you have, and I want to call this, as the way they were released. Then you have the FX6 for $6,500, $100. And then you have the Sony A1 for $6,500. Wait a second. The FX6 is, I think it's $6,500. Let me see. Let me actually search it right here. Sony FX6. Sony FX6. I'm sorry, $6,000. $6,000. Let me actually show you right here in Google browser view. There you go. So as you can see, you have the price right here. Let's go to B&H. $6,500. So yes, this camera is going to be, in between. So $4,500 in theory makes it kind of like the right price, for this camera. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if the camera was $4,000 body only. That's also another possibility. Now, the camera that my source is playing with has the handle and the XLR module. So that one, he told me that it's going to be more expensive than the Sony A7S III, but probably the version with just the body, if there is a version with just the body, could easily be $4,000, $500 more than the Sony A7S III. And here is the main question. Why would this camera without this super high resolution EVF would be more than the Sony A7S III, right? Because everything hints that this camera is going to be more expensive than the Sony A7S III. And if this camera is going to have the same guts and same power as the Sony A7S III, there's got to be something else that this camera does that the Sony A7S III doesn't do. I try to dig that information, but I was only be giving, that this is what it is. It's going to have the same features. Use your imagination, and completely understood. I really appreciate the fact that we're getting these leaks, sent to us. But I don't know, maybe the camera has something prepared that the Sony A7S III cannot do. Maybe the Sony A7S III cannot fly in the AirPeak. And that could be actually a good reason why Sony wouldn't want to, you to use the Sony A7S3. And I think that if this is the case, Sony's going to upset a lot of people, because imagine buying a brand new drone and just because the drone cannot connect with the camera, you also have to buy another camera. But for the way I'm seeing it right now, it seems that this is the direction, and I think that the additional cost is because this camera has been streamlined for the drone, but there's something in there that still kind of like, makes me ask myself, and why the fan? Why the fan in the camera if the Sony A7S III doesn't need one and the Sony A1? Let me know in the comments, what do you think this camera is going to have a fan if the camera is going to have the same specs as the Sony A7S III. All right, so I'm going to actually cross back to the chat. I'm sorry. Apparently, when I show the video, the sound cuts out. Let me just make sure that... And there you go. There you go. Hey guys, can you hear me now when I switch the video? Let me know. Just drop me a comment if you get audio when, I switch. Thank you. All right, so going back, thank you for that, buddy. That was, who was that told me that? Yep. All right, so let me read a little bit more. That was Eugenio. Thank you, Eugenio. The sound cuts out. The sound cuts out when you play. Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, Pixel Voice. Good morning. What's happening, man? By the way, awesome channel. Eugenio, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that statement. Okay, what else? Good morning from Pakistan. Now, oh yes, Sandra is saying, I've heard that this is going to have S-Cinetone codec, and that is actually one of the things that it has that the Sony A7S III doesn't have, and that has been confirmed to me. Yes, it's going to have the S-Cinetone profile there, which a lot of people like it. I don't see this being a deal breaker if it has it or not. It's really easy to match up, the S-Cinetone, especially if you shoot in BT 2020 or any of the 709s profile. I just hit it with my hand, sorry. Really easy to match up. But yes, if you're gonna have a bunch of cameras, maybe you're filming an interview and you want to capture, from different angles and just boom, deliver the content, that is going to be awesome. Audio with video overlay. Yeah, sorry, I just changed it. Let me know, guys, if you guys can actually hear the audio when I switch to video. I'm gonna do a test right now. Video 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Can you hear yeah? Were you able to hear the audio when I switched to the video? Let me know down below, guys. Really appreciate it. Santo, también eres argentino viviendo en Miami. Yo también soy argentino viviendo en Miami. Bárbaro. I met a lot of people through YouTube, actually. I made a lot of friends in person. Okay, great. So Sandra's saying that now when I switch to video, the audio works great. Sorry, guys. I forgot to add the video channel to the other screen. All right, so James Jackson. My buddy James Jackson. Actually, I was on the phone with him before I started this live. He's saying, honestly, FX3 seems very disappointing if it's just the Sony A7S III and an A6000 body. And, I get that. For a lot of people, this camera, brought a lot of joy, and a lot of hopes, because people were thinking that they were going to get a Sony FX6 in a much more condensed body. And I think that, yes, I think that Sony kind of like missed that opportunity. But at the same time, we have to understand what goes into putting variable NDs in the camera, because I think that alone would have been something that would have made a lot of people choose this camera over the FX6 or the FX9. Myself, in my opinion, when I shoot with cameras, I shot all my life with mirrorless, before that DSLRs, and before that camcorders, I need just a box where I can put the lens for most of the stuff that I do, most of the content that I generate, dies in social media or websites. So for me, that's more than enough, guys. And I'm sure that there are a lot of content creators and professional cinematographers that also was, they were looking for a camera that was going to be kind of like a mini FX9, basically a mini FX6, right? But I think that Sony ran through some probably size constraints And that would also could have been great if the camera had variable NDs, especially if this camera is going to be aimed, you know, to the new drone. Because once you're up there in the sky, how do you, you know, unless, you know, you change your aperture and you change a lot of things that you don't want to touch, it's kind of like a little bit cumbersome. But I don't know, maybe I missed some details, you know, maybe I wasn't told everything, you know, but I was simply told that this camera is going to be this, you know, kind of like a Sony A7S3, and picture your A7S3 and go ahead and talk about it, because that's what you're going to get in this camera, with minor, you know, ergonomic enhancements. And I've heard some performance enhancements, and I think he meant performance enhancements because of the fan. So, you know, I know that the Sony A7S3 does have an overheating, you know, threshold. It doesn't overheat right away. You can shoot for hours, but at some point the camera is going to give you the warning. Maybe the fan is just simply making sure that you can record indefinitely. But once again, if it uses the NPFZ100 battery, that means that at least you're going to have to stop the camera for the battery, or for the CF Express type A, or the SD card. Now, Brass Monkey said, thanks for fixing the audio. Oh, we were keen to just hear your thoughts. Yeah, let me actually go back to the video, guys, because, you know, I said a lot of things and, you know, you couldn't hear me. So I'm going to play the video again, and I'm going to tell you what I meant. So I was in the video, and let's actually wait for this part to pass. We see 1/4 inch mount. Okay, right there. Now look where it says input 3. The input 3 is the 3.5 millimeters, and I showed you guys before. It is exactly the same thing in this one. So, you know, they haven't invented anything new. They're going to be using the same, you know, the same XLR module as this one that has a weird name. And let me show you. There it is, the 3.5 millimeters and 2 XLR. I mean, this unit is actually awesome, guys. It has all the controls there, and then you have some noise reduction there, I believe it was. Oh no, digital analog, you have more options there. I haven't tweaked that in a while, so. But anyway, that's what I was telling you guys. What else? Now we can also clearly see the fans right there. It has vents at the bottom. So I wonder how this camera is gonna do in terms of weather sealing. You can also see clearly here the handle. You know, it is depicted to. Let me actually stop the video right here. Now let me talk about this, because this is what I was saying. Obviously, all the connection is gonna happen, or most of the connection, through the hot shoe mount, meaning that your audio is gonna connect through the hot shoe mount. So it wouldn't surprise me if this camera doesn't have a 3.5 on the body. You know, it only has one door for what I can see in this picture, in this video, I mean, and also in the picture it shows only one door. And most of all the Sony cameras, they usually have 3 doors, you know, one for a dedicated HDMI if we're talking about the Sony A7S3, another one where you're going to have the USB, and, you know, you also have the microphone input, the headphone jack, and, you know, the other door that has, you know, depending what camera you have, it may have an Ethernet or it may have other things. So this camera only shows, let's go back there, it shows only one door. So this could tell me that probably what we are going to see here is going to be SDI out or HDMI. And I mean, that door looks pretty big. Let me go back here. So probably they could put in this door. Maybe I can see the HDMI being on the left-hand side of that door, and then have the microphone and headphone jack, you know, on the side, and, you know, that way just requiring one door, but we don't know. All right, so what else? Are you expecting A7 IV will it come in April? Well, guys, you know, my source told me that rest assured that you are going to be getting, you know, any more info, any more leaks as, you know, as I get a hold of them. So that's that. This is the same source, guys. One of our sources that, you know, has been spot on in a lot of the things that we've been communicating here in the channel. I want only 4K 60. Yes, this camera is going to shoot 4K up to 120, so you're going to have the 4K 60. I can live with a good 2K or HD 120. Yeah, so you're gonna have 4K in 120 as well here. And the confirmed specs, I've been talking about the confirmed specs, but I'll sum it up to you guys. This is Christoph Pozo. It's going to be a Sony A7S3. So if you're familiar with the camera, go watch some of the videos that I did before about the Sony A7S3. Some of the videos somewhat has down because you're going to have a full frame sensor, 12 megapixel. You're going to have IBIS. You're going to have active image stabilization. We're not going to have internal RAW capability. That's another thing that got confirmed, and that's actually a bummer. It could have been good, but once again, you know, SD cards, they're not going to be fast enough, and the CF Type A, they cap at 160, which is maybe not enough for shooting 4K 120 OLI, for example, because it creates humongous files. So if you are going to want to shoot RAW, and because it is just like the Sony A7S3, this camera is going to require an Atomos recorder. And in my opinion, that's the best way to capture RAW or ProRes because, you know, you're going to be able also to gain the false colors, you know, the waveforms and all that stuff, something that you would want to actually preview. And this is another question because, you know, I wish that this camera brought false colors. And again, I didn't get that piece of information. I'm just going, you know, by the statement that our source told us that this camera is going to have only the same features of the Sony A7S3. But maybe it does have false colors, you know, and I think it would be stupid for this camera not to have false color. And it would be such a great selling point, false colors, waveform, and all that stuff. In this type of camera, it is time to bring the false colors. It is time to bring the waveform. And it is time to bring all that stuff even for still cameras, guys. The histogram is kind of like, to me, like all technology. You know, when I film, I use false color. And that is one of the reasons why I got this bad boy that I'm going to show you right now. The Canon C70. This is also one of the reasons why I cancel. Sorry, is this camera like messing with me? Yeah, is also one of the reasons why I canceled my FX6. And yeah, you know, the Canon C70 has ND filters. They are no variable, they pop in. But what I have done is I put a Polar Pro here in my camera. Let me see, a Polar Pro here in my camera. So when I need to tweak my exposure, I can do it here. So that's the problem of this camera, that you either overexpose or underexpose. But, you know, I get great results with this camera. And this screen has, you know, the false colors. Actually, let me power it on and show you guys. All right, so let me see. All right, so you tap right there. And then you go all the way there. And then you go, whoop, there you go. And then you have the false colors, you know, you have that tiny waveform. You can deactivate it. Oops, there. And you can also, you know, load LUTs in here, and it has built-in LUTs already. So one of the reasons why, you know, I'm going to continue shooting with this camera, and it's APS-C, but I love the Canon C70. And for those that tell me that I'm a Sony fanboy, this is what I've been using for video lately. I use the Sony A7S3 as well, and the A7SIII. So, Jim Jackson, C70 baby, yep, Jim Jackson. Jim Jackson has corrupted my mind, and kind of like, not corrupted my mind. He actually, you know, shared a lot of valuable information regarding cinema. I appreciate his advice. That's what he does. You know, I'm first a photographer, and I've been doing a lot of videos all my life, but always with mirrorless camera. And yes, you know, the Canon C70 is a great camera. The autofocus, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, kind of sucks, you know. It's not the best out there. It's nowhere near the autofocus of the Canon EOS R5. But for what this camera does, for the features that this camera has, you know, I really enjoy shooting with this camera. And when it comes to image stabilization, I much rather shoot with a Canon C70 with the digital image stabilization and the image stabilization of this lens. And this is the 24-70. Or 105, yeah, it's the 24-70. Let me actually mix up a little bit with Canon talking here, because there is another reason to consider the C70 before considering the Sony FX6 and the Sony, and this one, the FX3, and maybe the FX9, to be honest with you. And it is that if you don't want to invest in cinema glass, well, I mean, cinema glass doesn't have image stabilization for what I know from Sony, right? Or Canon. Anyway, hey, James, chip in on that one. But, you know, all the RF glass, that zoom glass that Canon has been putting out has built-in image stabilization and is flawless. So the 24-70 has image stabilization, whereas the Sony version does not. The 15 to, oh no, the 50, yeah, the 15 to 35 has image stabilization, which the 16 to 35 from Sony doesn't. The 105 to 1, the 24 to 105 from Canon has image stabilization. The one from Sony also has image stabilization, but it's way smoother on the Canon end. And when you activate image stabilization in the body, you can get really nice, stable handheld footage, much better than the handheld footage that I can get from my Sony A7S3 with sensor IBIS, with active image stabilization. And let's say I use the 24 to 105 image stabilized. So that's the reason why I went with Canon, guys. No fanboyism here. I just saw that product, a much more suitable product for myself, and I went with it. Let's see. All right, so Joshua Parkes says, when is the camera going to be announced? You know, I asked my source, and my source told me, I think that the February 23rd is still legit, but I haven't heard anything, you know, so I think it's, you know, it's that, you know, I think we're going to see this camera being announced probably on the 23rd, you know, the same day that they're going to, I believe the 23rd is the announcement day. So, and that is what, 10 days from now? That's crazy. Joel JC said, does it look like the LCD can be tilt up? Yeah, the LCD, well, it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to tilt up the display unless you open it, right? I believe Panasonic does the implementation where you have kind of like a hybrid flip out that tilts, but if it's closed, you can still tilt it like that too, you know, without opening the screen. That is a great implementation because for photography, a lot of the times I don't want to have the screen on the side. You know, I'm saying photography because of the Sony A7S3. But yeah, that would have been nice, but Sony hasn't come up with anything like that. The displays looks exactly as the one of the Sony A7C. Larry Longwee can't really think of any reason why it has a fan if a 7S3 can do 420 without this and that and that. Maybe, like I mentioned before, maybe it has a fan because there are going to be upcoming features. Maybe the camera in the future is going to be able to record RAW via firmware update. That could actually be a reason why. And if it can record RAW, I think it can do it, you know, onto the CF Express. But 160 is all you're going to get, 160 gigabytes. So I think that there is something there that I don't know yet. And I'm going to share with you guys as soon as I know. But it could be something that has to do with firmware update, potentially internal RAW, and that could be sick. Well, agreed to disagree on the C70 AF, LOL, but you already know. James always disagree because he does video, you know, first, and he's not too keen on relying on autofocus. But, you know, a lot of us, you know, hybrid shooters that we got to get the job done, and, you know, within the least amount of time. And a lot of times you cannot retake stuff. I mean, autofocus has saved, you know, my life many, many times. I don't know you. And again, I understand that it is not a professional feature, but define professional, because if you get what you're looking for to deliver professional, you know, results to your customer, I think is fine. Especially because the Sony A7S3 lets you mold over, you know, the autofocus, how the autofocus, you know, come in and out, and, you know, how responsive it is, the speed and the transition speed and all that stuff. So yes, it actually, you can program it to be as human as possible if you want. And that's one of the reasons why I like the Sony A7S3 so much. And the Canon C70 also has, you know, that thing that, you know, you can set a responsive and all that stuff. But again, this camera also lacks a lot of the good things that the Sony A7S III has. Like, for example, your focusing points here are limited to two, small and large. That's it. You don't have, you know, all those flexible ones, tiny one, make it bigger. None of that stuff exists in this camera, where it exists in the Sony A7S III. Therefore, it's going to be in this camera. And one of the reasons why, you know, I'm excited about this camera, even though I own a Sony A7S III, I'm really excited because it's a much more compact body. I just like the squarey, boxy design. And I think it's gonna, I think a lot of people are gonna like it, but at the same time, people are gonna hate it. Okay, so Isan Yusuf said, after watching most of the videos on YouTube, I found Sony has the best out of focus, but I'm a little bit confused about color sign of Sony. Is it better than the Canon EOS R5? Guys, I think that we could dispute that the color signs, up to the Sony A7 II was terrible. A lot of greens. It got a lot better in the Sony A7 III, and after all the subsequent releases, the Sony A7R4, which is a camera that I use a lot for my shoots, has in my opinion, great color science. And even the Sony A7C, which is the one that I'm filming right now, I think it has a very comparable color science to Canon. Canon favors a little bit more the skin tones, but I don't see that the ultra bothering greenish tint that you would actually get before from the Sony, for example, the Sony A7 II. So Sony has come a long way, and the Sony A7 III, I think it delivers the best color sign ever that Sony has put in one of their cameras. However, I shoot, now that I have the capabilities of 10-bit, I shoot in S-Log 3 on the Sony A7 III, and to me, I much rather have S-Log 3 than have a profile baked in. Unless I'm in a rush, and what I'm using a lot is the BT20 or the ITU 709, for example, in the A7C, which it gives you great color right out of the camera with a little bit of a fade, a little bit of a low contrast, good enough to manipulate things around and still get you a great image. Jeff's DZG says, is a Netflix approval? I don't know, guys. I don't think the Sony A7 III is Netflix approval. I was actually talking about James about this, and apparently for a camera to be Netflix approval, that doesn't mean that if you shot a short film or a film with any other camera, Netflix not gonna air it, right? If you get the contract. But it means that a Netflix approved camera is a camera if Netflix approves to kind of like budget your movie, to finance your movie. Well, then they have their own rules how you should actually, what kind of camera you should bring to set. But you can actually shoot any movies with any cameras, and if it's good enough for Netflix, they'll buy it. All right. I would like to have Adam Carlos says, Sandro, I would like to have the FX line internal ND. Yeah, guys, I mean, this camera was an FX camera, and because it bears the FX name, it made a lot of sense to think that the camera was going to come with ND filters. And I think a lot of people were super excited about that. I think a lot of people in their mind, they kind of like made up their mind and say, oh, it's an FX6, an FX camera. We're going to have the same ND of the FX6 and the FX9, and this is going to be great, and I'm going to save myself a couple of thousands of dollars, and I'm going to get basically what I need in smaller footprint. But no, it's not the case, guys, and Sony is going to make you spend the money for the FX6 if you want variables ND. And it makes a lot of sense, because one of the things that I mentioned when I first released my first video about this camera, if this camera exists, it has to be different than the FX6 and the FX9. Otherwise, it would be kind of like Sony shooting themselves in the foot, releasing a camera right after the FX6. You cannot get the FX6. It's almost sold out everywhere. And here they are coming up with another camera that is cheaper, but it has pretty much the same things as the Sony FX6. That would have been a mistake. So I knew that this camera was gonna stripped out. And I also mentioned the first day, and no one believed me that the camera was going to have still capabilities. And I hope that I'm still right, because if it is like the Sony A7 III, it's going to have, still capabilities, and that's going to be great for people that, want to take aerial pictures. All right. So Tarek Sky says, some info on this camera being made more for the drone they're coming out with. Yeah, man, this camera is gonna be the drone camera to get. So here we are. Now, for those that just joined me, let me just show you this video once again. Boom, there you go. And as you can see, that's the bottom of the camera. I'm gonna see if I can show you this other video. Where is the other video? Here we go. Oh no, I cannot show this video because it shows like a crucial component of the camera. Yep. And I was still not sure, but yeah. So the other video that I shared is actually my last YouTube video that I posted last night. So after this video, go watch that video. I talk about the latest things. And let me see, because I think my source text me something else. All right. Okay, so he's telling me the Sony A7S, the Sony FX3, it costs in my country more. It's gonna cost my country more than the Sony A7S3 by a few dollars. So keep that in mind. The other thing is that, let's see. Okay, it has the same exact codes, same CF Express Type A, IBIS, and active image stabilization. The handle has 2 XLR inputs and 3.5 audio jack. Of course, we already shared that. It's exact same A7S3 sensor. Everything A7S3 has performance-wise is like the same. I can't remember the weight, but it's similar, only 50 grams or so heavier. That's the good news, guys. So it's not gonna be a heavy camera, even though it's a little bit bigger, but at the same time, it's a little bit smaller. So yeah, any other question, guys, let me know. I would love to answer what I can answer right now. Okay, so Sandra said, I agree, the drop-in system will be for the use on the Sony A7S3, A7SIII, etc. too. Canon has one too. Yeah, maybe they come up with a drop-in, type of adapter, and that will be actually really good. However, it's not gonna be electronic variable, And if you're up in the sky, good luck changing that a few thousand feet or hundreds of feet. Okay. I'm more of a Canon guy. Bought the C70 today. Excited and ready for it. Tarek Sykes, you're gonna like the Sony. You're gonna like the Canon C70, especially if you're used to shooting manual focus or if you don't care for autofocus. But autofocus in the C70 is not horrible. It works really good, but it is contrast based. So you need to have contrast. You need to have a lighter background and something that is a little bit darker for the camera to tell. And if you have that capability, that environment, the camera is gonna perform no issues. Yeah. What would be the main reason you should get this and not the Sony A7S3 for YouTube content? Okay, that is a good question, and a lot of people ask that question in prior videos that I've done, and I think it's gonna come down to the following thing. You're going to be using the camera more in gimbals, because if that's the case, I would much rather get a camera with the same power of the Sony A7S3 that's going to allow me to put in smaller gimbals like this one and potentially even smaller gimbals, So I would get that camera if I'm a real estate, shooter, for example, a camera that I can bring to gimbals. I would get probably that camera also for weddings, and again, I don't like heavy gimbals, and I haven't, but I like to, try to put the camera in the smallest gimbal possible. Obviously, lenses are going to have a factor, determining what gimbal you're going to bring as well. It's not just the weight of the camera. But, the other way, the other reason why I consider that you may want to get the Sony A7S3 is if the EVF is very important for you. And to be honest with you, a lot of the times, I wish this camera had an EVF. But this is because the screen is not bright enough. Now, the screen of the Sony A7S3 is really, really bright, and I have no problem, reading the screen, in broad daylight with the Sony A7S3. But yeah, I think it's going to be a matter of what appeals to you the most, a camera with EVF or not. And for those that are getting the camera for photography as well, because the Sony A7S3 is a great photography camera. I've done a video, I've taken photos. You cannot tell the difference, if it was shot with an a Sony A7 IV, or with the 12. You're gonna have to zoom in to see that. Even when you print it, you can tell the difference. So if you're getting the Sony A7S III because you are a hybrid shooting, a shooter. I'm so tired that I'm mumbling right now. If you're a hybrid shooter, and you do a lot of social media content and you don't want to buy two cameras because you like to, preview your composition in the viewfinder, well, the Sony A7S III is going to be a much better camera for you. Now, if you think that the Sony FX3 is going to give you, oh my God, what a cinematic, quality, it's going to be the same quality of the Sony A7S III. So for image quality, there's not going to be a difference. Let me continue reading here. So this is another question that Nino C is mentioning, and a couple of you guys brought that up as well in prior videos. Cine shooters will get more for their money with a Blackmagic 6K, right? And I think so. I think that the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, is a tried and true camera, and it's pretty powerful. It also has its limitation. I mean, it's not as small as this camera. The 6K, I believe, is a Super 35 sensor, if I'm not mistaken, correct? And I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages in my opinion, but the image quality of the cinema cameras, I don't own one, but the videos that I've seen, even the straight out of the camera files are really, really nice, really cinematic, great dynamic range. But the Sony A7S III also has great dynamic range, so expect this camera to have great dynamic range. Meatballs Products and Nino C, the sensor size will bring over people from the stuff like the 6K. They will like bigger sensors over the extra resolution. Yeah, and that is true. If you're someone that likes that extra, shallow depth of field, well, I mean, probably you're gonna get a Sony camera or Canon full frame camera, in my opinion. So there is a camera that kind of like stood out for me, and again, I'm not a cinema pro. I've shot thousands of videos in my life, but I don't consider myself a cinematographer. But there is a camera that I did have seen footage, and there is a camera today that doesn't break the bank, and there is a camera that has that super nice cinematic quality, and that is the Red Komodo. Always being fascinated by Red cameras. I never thought that I was gonna own one. I almost buy the Komodo. I actually pre-ordered and canceled it again because I'm like, you know what? I just gotta, get more out of this guy because I have it, and then I end up with a lot of gear, and I don't want to do that because I end up losing money and then selling it and all that stuff. But the Red Komodo actually is a camera that produces an image quality that I don't have here. The highlight roll off of the Komodo, or any of the Red camera, is something that you're not gonna find in a Sony, in my opinion. It is not the most user-friendly camera to use. If you're coming from a DSLR, definitely no. But for those that have mastered the camera, I mean, people don't go back from Red. So that is the only camera that I say to watch for, the brand to watch for, because I think that Red is also on the right track, and I think the Komodo is a camera that kind of like is trying to tell us a story, a new story for Red, that they were going to be focusing on people that don't want to spend 80 grand on a Red, right? So we'll have to actually watch and see. LGUMI say, I'm considering returning my recently purchased A7S III for the FX3. Probably not then. I don't know, man. I mean, I have this on A7S III. I would love to get the FX3. I don't know if I'm going to be getting it because it's exactly like the Sony A7S III. I always like to have two Sony, cameras. I always had it, but now that I'm shooting 10-bit, probably this is the reason for me to get the FX3. Or, I don't know, maybe, to be honest with you, if the price difference is not too much, I am going to go for the FX6 instead of the FX3. The FX3, yes, it's a Sony A7S III. Yeah, Meeple Product is right. With the Komodo, the problem with the Komodo is that you buy the camera, then you have to buy, most likely, the expansion module. The screen on the Komodo is useless. It's fucking, stocked on the top of the camera and tiny. You are gonna have to most likely buy a nice cage, buy some bars, buy some handle with a remote trigger. Yeah, it gets expensive really quick. Now, speaking about remote trigger, in my video I also mentioned that the camera has, excessive amount of threading on the body, maybe even more than the Canon C70. The Canon C70 has 1, 2, 3, and it has one under the grip. Now, let me actually show you. Let me actually go there again. Let's actually go browser view. And where is it? Let me go to... Let's actually go to Sony Alpha Rumors, which is right there. And there you go. So now this camera has 1, 2, 3 at the top and 4 on the side and 1 at the bottom, which is what we can see right there. So it has 5, threading on the body of the camera, and I'm assuming the Sony most likely is gonna come out with their own rigging options, to be honest with you. They're coming out with their own drone. The camera comes with their own top handle and own XLR adapter. Chances are that they're probably gonna design a side handle with a remote, trigger for the record and stop. So that could actually be really good, guys. All right, Sony has launched the new drone capable of carrying Sony cameras. Boom. Yeah, man. All right, so these names, man. Ito. I'm late. So what's the spec? Different than Sony A7S III? Does it shoot raw internally? Is it 10-bit or not? Man, no. It's exactly like the Sony A7S III, and if you want raw, you gotta go externally. And it doesn't have ND filters like a lot of people said it has. Guys, I wish I could actually go through all the message, but there are a lot of people here. This video has been played already 1,200 times. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So I think it's time to end this live, guys. I wanted to share this. I leave you with this video at the end. Enjoy right there. And I will see you once again in another episode. Don't forget to go and watch my last video. Leave me a comment there. Tell me that you come from this live. Also, don't forget about the giveaway of the brand new Xeon Crane 2S. It's also listed the rules in the last video. You can win this one. Announcement April 5th. And guys, thank you for watching. Take care.